So in this video, we're going to be talking about Chapter 2, He's Gone, from the memoir of Lisa Marie Presley that was done with her daughter Riley and Julia Roberts. Chapter 2 is where we start to see Elvis's health taking a downhill spiral. Now, Lisa had seen many times when she was at Graceland her father not be all there. He'd physically be there, but he'd be out of it. And there was this one instance in Chapter 2 where she says that she saw him, that he would tease people. In Chapter 2, she talks about an instant where he would be on a sled. Him and his crew of buddies would be on a sled, and they'd go belly down on the sled, then go forward really, really fast, and then they'd flip. And Elvis was on his stomach, and then he lied on his back. He fell. When it turned, he was on his back, and he just stood. He didn't move. And everybody around him, from all the people that were there to Lisa Marie, they all started freaking out because he was not moving. And then he would move, and then he would crack. He would be laughing because to him that was the funniest thing ever. And then after that, she'd say, "Daddy, I don't want you to die. I want you to stay around. I really want you to take your health seriously." And he'd look at her and he'd go, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to worry." But there, again, she would see him out of it, and he would be physically there, but he'd be out of it. And another instance is, she saw her father laying on the ground in his bathroom. He was severely bloated. By seeing that, she got worried. And he was trying to get up, pulled on the towel rack, but broke the rack in the process, called for Aunt Delta and other relatives. The other relatives come to Elvis, and he's trying to get up. He's out of it, and he's trying to make his way to her because he knows that she sees him out of it, not acting like himself. And he tries to come to her. He falls, and she looked at Aunt Delta and the other relatives, and she said, "Daddy's going to get sick. You need to get him into the bathroom or he's going to puke everywhere." And so they took him into the bathroom, and sure enough, he got sick. She never said anything to anybody. She let them know that he wasn't feeling well, but she knew inevitably that something was going to happen, and it scared the living shit out of her. Now, also in this chapter, we learn about the crush she has on a little boy named Rory. She talked about how good looking he was from her perspective, being the age that she was at. She had a huge, huge fat crush on him. He ended up kissing her for the first time in the jungle room when they were down there playing hide and seek, and she was hoping that he'd do it again. But he didn't, and she ended up getting her heart broken because he had other little girls that were Lisa's age throwing themselves at him, being the age that he was at, and that tore her to shreds. And then we find out in the same chapter that Elvis pulled Rory to the side and he said, "You do anything to my child, my daughter, romantically, anything, I will fucking kill you." Now, when you hearing that from Elvis Presley, you know Elvis ain't playing about his baby girl, because he loved and adored her like every dad loves their child. Well, not every dad, but dads that love their child will say that to the boy that their daughter likes. And that's what he did to Rory. And so years later, she found out from Rory that Elvis gave him that threat, and he kept his promise. Lisa didn't find out till years later because she met up with Rory and other relatives on her dad's side to have dinner, and he told her that, and she's like, "Oh, okay, now I get it." But we find out in this chapter that she loses her dad, which she knew was coming. She could feel it, intuitively feel it, because the energy was off, and he had been up all night the night before he passed, And he said, please go to bed. I want you to get some sleep. He's like, okay, I love you. Gave him a kiss and a hug goodnight. Went to sleep, woke up around between 1 and 2 in the afternoon, and something didn't feel right. There was commotion all around the house downstairs. And Lisa was wondering, what's wrong with Daddy? What's wrong with Daddy? And one of the relatives said, Daddy doesn't feel good. Daddy's not feeling that great. And so she went in there and she saw him face down on his stomach, unresponsive. She couldn't see his full face. All she could see is him face down on the floor. And she screamed. And other people within the house that were supposed to be there for him, because he was supposed to be touring that day, he was lifeless. She couldn't see his face, but she saw his whole entire body, him being unresponsive and not moving. They had to take him out of the house, take him to the hospital to get him up to see if he would be responsive, because he was unresponsive when they found him. And Lisa was being pulled by other people, pulled out of the bathroom. They made her go downstairs. She was freaking out because she knew this was going to happen, but she didn't say anything to anybody because she didn't think anybody would believe her. And so they took her downstairs. They took Elvis out of the house, took him to the hospital around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He was pronounced dead. Lisa got word of that, and that just shattered her whole entire world. You gotta remember, she was a daddy's girl. She could get away with anything. But on this particular day, that shattered her to her core. She didn't know how else to deal with it. Face was all red because she was so pissed off. All she could do was go alongside with Amber, who is Ginger Alden's niece, and ride around in Graceland. Ride around the front entrance, around the house in circles, because she didn't know how else to process what was happening. She knew it was bad, but once it was confirmed, she just wanted to hightail it out of the house and get away from everything that was so chaotic. And Priscilla came over to the house yelling at Lisa, Lisa, stop doing that. You're not supposed to be doing that. What are you doing with being on the cart for? You shouldn't be doing this. There's going to be people snapping pictures of you knowing full well your dad just died. What are you doing? And she just didn't want to hear of it. And she wanted to tune it out. So that crushed her whole soul. And then they brought him back to Graceland for the public viewing. Lisa Marie got to see people, in a whole crowd of people, say goodbye to her father. And she didn't know how to process her grief. She knew that her dad had died, but she didn't want to have people seeing her grieve because she didn't want to be criticized for it. So because she saw others grieve, she held hers in for a long time and didn't know how to process that. She knew her dad was Elvis Presley, but she didn't want to be criticized for grieving him. And I think that's why she held it in so much. Also, at this time after the viewing, Lisa goes to camp to kind of get away from Memphis for a while, to distract herself, to not deal with the grief, to not have to, confront that. She went to camp, and then she went to England. She went to Europe for a little bit just to get out of the States, to get away from the press. But the press were always following her and her mom wherever they went. And it was at this time that Priscilla met with John Travolta. John Travolta introduced Priscilla and Lisa to Scientology. Now, before that took place, Lisa met with Freddie Mercury. She went to a Queen concert and found out that Freddie loved Elvis, was a big fan of Elvis. So as a result of that, Lisa took one of his scarves and gave it to Freddie and said, here, you can have this. Please take good care of it. It was my daddy's. Please don't ruin it, But he was a real humble, sweet, loving person, as Lisa recalled. Also at this time, she was being introduced to Scientology at a young age. It was introduced to her by John Travolta. Travolta pulled Priscilla and Lisa to his side and said, hey, I think you should try Scientology for a bit to see if that'll help you with your grief, because I know you guys just lost Elvis, and I want to be here for you if you ever need anything. And so after that, Lisa was enrolled in the Church of Scientology. And also having the Church of Scientology, plus having school, going to all these various different degrees of school. One was a regular school up in Los Angeles. Another one was a French school where her mom was dating a French guy, and Priscilla wanted Lisa to learn French. And Lisa's like, fuck that, I don't want to do this, but whatever. I mean, if Lisa didn't do it, she didn't get to go to Graceland. And she would go back to Graceland for Easter, for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for summer break. She latched on to Elvis' side of the family because they were loving, doting, and actually cared about her. Versus Priscilla's side of the family. Priscilla's side of the family didn't see Lisa as a human being. They said, oh, you're nothing special. Who do you think you are? You think you can get spoiled because you're Elvis Presley's daughter. Imagine having to hear that from your grandparents on your mama's side, and you having to grieve the loss of your dad and have the whole world looking at you as you're grieving. I don't get it. And this is where Lisa details where the relationship with her mother starts to take another downhill turn, because Priscilla wasn't being the mom that Lisa needed her to be, so therefore she resented her because she was always putting her men, Priscilla was always putting her men before Lisa, and so she would be off with one of her men, and Lisa would be left with nannies and cooks. If it wasn't cooks and nannies, it was people from Scientology. And it was always, if you do this, you'll get to have this. Priscilla would use Graceland as a reward token. If you do what you're supposed to do, you can go to Graceland, spend time with the other in-laws, and we'll go from there. But if she didn't do what Priscilla asked her to do, it was, you're not going to go to Graceland. So Priscilla used that as a bargaining tool. But this is where Lisa's relationship with her mother took a downhill turn. And it's only going to get worse from here. Chapter 2, it starts to get really, really heavy. Because this is Lisa talking about her dad's drug usage. Having to split her time between Elvis and Priscilla. Priscilla having different men. Elvis having different girlfriends. Lisa said that she loved Linda Thompson. She thought highly of Linda. But when it came to Ginger didn't really know how to interact with Lisa and Elvis's crew of Memphis Mafia members. I mean, she was very quiet, standoffish. And I think because Lisa got away with so much at Graceland, that made Ginger jealous for her niece. Because that was Lisa's home. That was Lisa's childhood home. She went in there, raised all types of hell with different people in the family on her dad's side and Grandma Gladys's side. She was able to get away with anything and everything because Elvis didn't have any rules. Now, when she got back to Los Angeles, she had to have rules, had to have a routine, homework, all of that, schooling. Lisa didn't like that. So as a result, after Elvis passed, she started distancing herself from her mother and her mother's side of the family because Priscilla's side of the family didn't see her as a person. They didn't allow her to grieve the way that she was supposed to grieve. And I think this is what did her in her later years as an adult. She lost one of the most important people in her life at a very early age, so she didn't know how to take that in because she saw everybody else grieving him as the icon, Elvis Presley, the handsome, beautiful Southern boy from Tupelo, Mississippi, handsome as could be, the icon. She saw him as dad, not just Elvis Presley, the icon, Elvis Presley, the dad. She loved and doted on that man, and she immersed herself in his fame. She saw what kind of impact he had as an entertainer and as a singer, and how he presented himself publicly. She loved that, but she didn't like having the press on her ass. Now remember, she's been having this done since she was little, when she was a baby. So as an adult, she would resent that. Like I said, in this particular chapter, we see the start of the decline of the relationship between Priscilla and Lisa, because Priscilla at this time is trying to get her career off the ground, acting and modeling, and trying to make a name for herself, making her connections within the industry in Hollywood, while leaving Lisa with nannies and cooks, and if it wasn't that, it was Scientology. This is very, very, very heavy. It breaks my heart because she was not shown love by Priscilla. Priscilla didn't think of her as a human being, didn't, see her be herself. Priscilla would not allow Lisa to be herself emotionally, mentally, physically. Priscilla wanted to control every aspect of Lisa's life. And it started when she started to grow up and find her own voice and go through these periods in her life where there'd be tons of grief. And her losing Elvis kind of did her in a little bit emotionally. And so she would kind of just zone out, not want to deal with Priscilla, not want to deal with schoolwork. She would barricade herself in her room and blast her music as a way to cope with her grief, because she didn't know how else to handle that. I mean, you got the whole world looking at you when you're a baby. You lose your dad when you're 9, and then you're trying to navigate through that, and your mother doesn't really pay attention to you. So, you kind of have to give Lisa a little bit of a break. She didn't have the best mother. Priscilla's out here saying, oh, I'm the best mom. No, she wasn't. Even though she's painting herself to be one. But this is the beginning of the heavier parts of the book. This is book summary, video 2 of From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough, narrated by Riley Keough and Julia Roberts. Chapter 2, He's Gone.